Well, tonight, Governor Cuomo and lawmakers have reached a budget deal, cut some popular plans, but the question is, does it cut spending and deal with ethics reform? Then, in the wake of the Eric Garner and Michael Brown protests, we are seeing more and more situations where police officers, they're at odds with their communities. I'm going to talk with a retired NYPD lieutenant to get his take on a volatile situation. Also, March Madness in the Hoosier State. Now, I'm not talking about basketball here in the NCAAs. I'm talking about a controversial new law that has people screaming discrimination. So the question is, why is the governor saying it's all about tolerance? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And we begin in New York, and that's where Governor Cuomo and lawmakers, they've agreed to a budget framework. Now, the $142 billion plan, it bumps spending by less than 2%, and that keeps it within the governor's goal. But the plan does not include a bunch of things, including the DREAM Act, a minimum wage hike, property tax rebates, or an education tax credit that's supported by Cardinal Timothy Dolan, among others. But it does include the $5.4 billion one-time windfall from the financial settlement. That money is going to go towards revitalizing the upstate economy, giving the entire state broadband coverage, and helping to pay for the new Tappan Zee Bridge. It also includes a deal when it comes to ethics that would require lawmakers to disclose more about their outside income and outside legal clients, and a new rule that could also strip pensions from public officials if they're convicted of corruption. All right, let's get into this. Let's bring in our panel. Jeannie Zaino, professor of political science at Iona College and professor of campaign management at NYU, and Dominic Carter, the performer. We'll talk more about that. He's also a political journalist and author when he's not on the stage. All right, let's start off with the deal here. Ethics reform. Some people have said good start. A lot of people said didn't go nearly as far enough. Let's remind folks, the governor said if this wasn't in there, if this wasn't what he wanted, we weren't going to have a budget, period. Good start, or are you a little disappointed when we look at the details?
It's a good start if it's a start, and I think that's the big question everybody is asking. You know, if you're making over $1,000, you have to disclose outside of obviously Albany. If you're a lawyer, you have to disclose your clients. But I think what the good government groups are saying is that yes, it's a good start. It's something that is long overdue, but is it a start or is this going to be the end? In other words, once Shelley Silver was arrested, is this something that is just going to happen as a one-time checkoff and then we're going to move past it? That won't solve the problem in Albany, because what we need to think about is real reform in Albany. And while disclosure, as the governor says, it's the toughest disclosure measure in the country, and we take him on his word on that, but is it enough? Disclosure is a step, but it's not everything. For instance, they have skipped the idea of completely, overhauling the legislature to make it a full-time legislature with full-time pay, so there's no question as to who these people are beholden to. They skipped the campaign finance reform end of things. So there's a lot of things that aren't in there that I think good government groups are asking. Hopefully this is a step forward, but not the end. And
also transparency with family members and also close relatives. Dominic, there's also questions on ethics about will the funding and also the oversight be there for this thing? It's a good idea and it passes, but if they don't really enforce it, what's it good for? You've covered corruption up and down the line here.
For far too long.
Right, but is the governor right and others saying, hey, nothing's perfect, but this is a major change in Albany from where we were before?
I want to borrow the professor's words. It's a good start. Anyone that thinks you're going to go into the political process involving the governor and the legislature, three men in a room, if you will, and if you think you're going to wave a magic wand and go from 0 to 100 in terms of what you want, that's just not realistic. So this is a good start. It's putting it on the table, but it's receiving some criticism. Tonight, Attorney General Eric Snyderman is criticizing it, saying that it does not go far enough, that it's just tinkering, if you will, with the edge, because he is making the case, and this is a slap at Governor Cuomo, and this is interesting because they have not really gone at each other. Snyderman is saying that the only way you could deal with ethics reform in New York State is a total ban on outside income. But that's just not realistic to start.
And
so
also,
this is a step in the right direction.
And also, there was questions as to how much disclosure the governor himself also has to have here as well. Okay, What was or wasn't in this that also caught your eye, the budget, beyond the ethics?
Yeah, I mean, I think you listed the big things. One thing he talked an awful lot about was increasing the minimum wage. Not there. The DREAM Act, not there. Those are two big things. Also, he wanted to tie teacher evaluations to 50% of the standardized tests. Apparently, that's not there as well. So there's plenty of things for them to do. Now, we should say, the oddity about this is a budget. It's supposed to be about fiscal matters, not these social issues. So, you know, the idea that they're tied, the governor was very clear to his credit. I'm putting these in here because I believe in them and I want to show people that I believe in them. But the fact that he pulled them out is not a big shock, and there's 3 more months left in this session in which they could address some of these issues. The other one I should mention is the criminal justice reforms, completely out after the Eric Garner case. And so it's interesting. Those are big things he talked about, apparently completely all out of the budget now.
I got an idea how some of the Tappan Zee is going to get paid, not the whole thing, but leave that aside. Anything else that caught your eye?
Well, all of the initiatives, DREAM Act, special investigator, if you will, following Eric Garner, to me, these were things that were never going to happen. So I agree, it's not surprising that they're not in there. The governor, you know, every governor just throws out certain items that the legislature can claim that they won by rejecting them. What surprises me, Richard, is that this, to a degree, is a presidential election budget. Top priority for Governor Cuomo. The top priority, more important than DREAM Act, education, we can go down the list, was an on-time budget. This is the 5th year with an on-time budget. Now, why is that important? Because if lightning strikes, if Hillary doesn't run, I can go if to get to Cuomo, then he can make the argument, look, I can deal with Republicans. I'm bipartisan. Look at my state. We were able to negotiate a budget and be on time for the 5th time for 5 years in a row. And that is somewhat of an accomplishment in New York State.
He can really emote like a thespian. We're going to get into his...
He's very good on stage.
Yes, as you will see a little bit later in the program from what I'm alluding to. All right, a couple other stories that caught my eye from around the region here, and I want to start in New Jersey, where Atlantic City, no news here that they've had fiscal problems, but now it could be so significant here. Look at that headline. Would this headline have been even conceivable? Forget about 1970, 1990. In 1990, not my favorite guy, but Donald Trump opened the Taj Mahal Casino. At the time, the largest and most expensive casino on the planet. The hotel tower, the tallest building in the entire state of New Jersey. That's only 1990. You go back even further, of course, you got HBO's Boardwalk Empire, and it showed Atlantic City during the Prohibition. Back then, the city was not only a huge tourist destination, it was also the hub, of course, of bootlegging ruled by the gangsters. But look at the city now. 4 of the 12 casinos already shuttered. There's competition or debates. There could even be more. Now you got more casinos opening in New York State, as we've talked about in this program. Pennsylvania already has some. There could even be more. They've taken their toll, the competition for that same gambling dollar, and it never really became the family destination that Vegas has turned into. But amazing how fast it has gone into the decline. AC made a big bet on gambling and is facing something that was once unfathomable that is going bust. Let's hope there is a second act. Now to Connecticut, where 26 cyclists left from Sandy Hook this weekend for a 400-mile ride to Washington. 26, that number, of course, represents the number of people killed in that Connecticut school shooting of 2012. They're making the trip to encourage Congress to pass stricter gun laws. Specifically, the riders, they want mandatory background checks, banning high-capacity magazines, and making gun trafficking a federal crime. And they've also made stops along the way to encourage local leaders at state legislatures to push for these gun control measures. It's a terrific group, terrific bunch of folks here, and we wish them all the best. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about a subject we've talked about quite a bit. We're going to get an interesting perspective on it, though. Obviously, there's palpable tension in a lot of communities between police and minority populations, and acutely so since the Eric Garner case and before that the Michael Brown one. I will talk to a former NYPD lieutenant about how this relationship can and must be improved.